Hello everyone! Have you ever wondered what the soldiers and commanders in the Star Wars saga ate when the blasters fell silent? What was on the mercenaries' menu in harsh field conditions? Take the Mandalorians for example. What ingredients were used to make stewed meat in the galaxy? Today we're going to talk about dry rations. Strangely enough, this topic is covered rather sparsely in materials about the universe. First, let's figure out what a ration pack is. It's an individual food ration designed for soldiers in situations where it's impossible to set up a full kitchen and prepare hot meals. Many of you are familiar with the acronym MRE, Meal, Ready to Eat. When it comes to the meat component, the main contents of canned rations for Imperial units and GAR clones have become Gornts and Nerfs. A Gornt is a small omnivorous creature up to 1.5 meters at the withers. Its historical homeland is the planet Hethar in the eponymous system of the Atravis sector. It turned out that Gornts are ideal for industrial breeding, as they are undemanding in terms of feed, gain weight rapidly, and reproduce as prolifically as rabbits. Initially, this meat was a local delicacy among the colonists, but after Hethar's integration into the Galactic Republic, mass shipments of both carcasses and livestock began. The Gornt's remarkable resilience in various natural and climatic conditions led to their spread across thousands of planets, hundreds of which specialized in agriculture. Thanks to this, Gornt meat, along with Nerf meat, became an affordable product in every corner of the galaxy. It was even served in various forms at famous Dex's Diner on Coruscant. It is quite likely that good old Obi-Wan Kenobi often stopped by to see his four-armed friend to grab a juicy Gornt cutlet. The meat business, built on the breeding of Nerfs and Gornts, was very profitable. A huge number of businesses built their operations exclusively on selling Gornt meat in raw, dried, smoked, or canned forms. The Republic Army had come to appreciate this product long before the start of the Clone Wars. The meat was known for its juiciness, nutritional value, and distinctive sweet aftertaste, somewhat reminiscent of Earth pork. Dried Gornt was a standard part of the Republic's diet even during the era of endless clashes with the Sith and their legions. I'm referring to the times of the Mandalorian Wars and the events described in SWTOR. Players who chose the Jedi Knight class surely remember Sergeant Fidelton Rusk, a stickler for regulations who categorically ignored any food other than army rations. It was Gornt stew and dry biscuits that he consumed on an industrial scale. During the Clone Wars, this meat became the staple for supplying both the Republic Army units and the living units of the Separatist Army. Gornt was a constant ingredient in any stew in the clone field kitchens. Later, the Rebel Alliance and the New Republic adopted this same tradition, a time-tested product. Imperial Command also saw no reason to change what was already working perfectly well. Legions of stormtroopers and fleet crews ate the same meat as their predecessors. There is just one notable difference. During the Empire era, the daily meat ration per soldier was slightly reduced. The reason is simple. Unlike ordinary conscripts, clones required a higher caloric intake due to their accelerated metabolism and the side effects of accelerated maturation. Slightly less often than Gornt meat, Nerf meat could be found in canned food in soldiers' rations. In terms of taste, it is practically ordinary Earth beef, and outwardly, these cloven-hoofed animals bear quite a few similarities. It is believed that Alderaan is the homeland of the Nerfs. At least that is where they were first domesticated and bred. At the withers, the average Nerf reaches about 1.3 to 1.5 meters, though there were also select giant breeds standing over 2 meters tall. These animals were also considered a profitable investment for farmers, although they required much more work than Gornts. Thanks to their phenomenal ability to adapt to different climates, these space cows were distributed throughout the galaxy. Huge herds grazed on thousands of agricultural planets, primarily in the core worlds, as well as in the inner and middle rings. Beyond the middle ring, however, farms for some reason preferred to work with less temperamental livestock. Another type of protein that occasionally appeared on the army menu was veg meat, most often in a dried form. It can be found in emergency rations. It's important to understand that this isn't a standard dry ration, but specifically an emergency kit. When developing it, the engineers didn't think about aesthetics or refined taste at all. Their only concern was how to pack the maximum concentration of calories and vitamins into the smallest possible volume. Such kits were a mandatory part of the equipment for fighter pilots, bomber crews, and shuttle crews in case of a crash. Boxes containing emergency rations were always kept in Starship escape pods. If a pilot was shot down over some uninhabited territory, this ration became their only chance of surviving until rescuers arrived. This is exactly the ration we saw in the 7th episode of the saga when Unkar Plutt gave it to Rey as payment for the scrap metal she brought. This food doesn't look very appetizing, but in a fight for survival, it becomes a real delicacy. A typical MRE consisted of 3 dark green pieces of dried veg meat and bread concentrate. It was this very bread that Rey ate in its finished form in The Force Awakens. It's worth noting that this same meat and bread product were also found in full-fledged MREs, though the composition there was far more varied. The very concept of this ration originated during the Clone Wars for the needs of the Republic Army. After the conflict ended, the Empire adopted it without any modifications, and following them, the Rebels and the New Republic. The result was a sort of gastronomic long liver relevant in all eras. It was intended that a single package would last a soldier a full day. To turn this kit into something edible, you had to pour the brown powder into a container of water, which triggered that very chemical reaction from the movie where the dough swells up. Then it was recommended to add the veg meat to the same container so it would soften a bit. It was strongly advised against eating MRE dry. It was quite possible to break your teeth on the rock-hard ingredients. A huge number of these rations were left lying in the sands of Jakku after the famous epic battle. It's worth noting that the creators of Star Wars apparently have a rather vague idea of what real emergency rations look like. For comparison, take a look at modern Earth emergency rations, which can be eaten without preparation. They are light, compact, and can be quite tasty. If you're interested, you can easily buy such a ration online or at any store that sells military goods. However, let's return to the realities of the galaxy far, far away. In addition to the emergency rations already mentioned, this universe also features other edible concentrates that appeared in the 6th episode of the saga and the Clone Wars animated series. We're talking about protein bars. One such treat was eaten by the young Twi'lek Numa, who was rescued by the clones Waxer and Boyle in the 20th episode of the animated series' first season. Such bars were a typical product of the military chemical industry. They tasted either completely neutral or completely bland, but possessed tremendous nutritional value. Just a couple of these bars a day was enough to provide even an ever-hungry clone's body with the necessary set of proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. A huge advantage was their compactness. A 100-gram bar could be stored practically indefinitely, was odorless, and, crucially in a combat situation, was almost completely absorbed by the body. This last factor allowed the soldier to avoid being distracted by bodily needs, which is critically important when you're lying in ambush for hours or standing guard, where every trip to the bathroom could cost you your life. These concentrates came in various forms, ranging from bars and cubes to tubes. They were usually white or beige, occasionally brown. Clones from the Republic Army's line units most often chewed on the tubes, while the elite special forces from the Republic Commando book series preferred the cube format. In later eras, Imperial soldiers and Rebel Alliance fighters also actively used these bars, including them in their belt pouches and pilot emergency kits. Remember that moment on Endor in Episode 6 when Leia tried to offer an Ewok a strange bar? That was the very same army ration. True, the forest dweller had no use for processed food. The planet had plenty of fresh meat, which ran around in white armor and actively resisted the prospect of ending up in a pot. Of course, not everyone was eager to eat processed food, the health consequences of which were unclear. At the slightest opportunity, both infantry and tank crews tried to get their hands on proper rations with real meat, saving the bars only for the absolute worst-case scenario. It's also worth mentioning energy pudding, another type of ration that was considered less harsh on the stomach. It usually looked like a dense block of dark or brown color and was included in both regular daily rations and emergency kits. Such puddings have been known since the days of the Great Galactic War. They were consumed by Republic soldiers and Sith Empire warriors. For example, Dr. Archibald Froderick Kimball, known to SWTOR players as Doc, mentioned that it was these puddings that helped him pull through an extremely dire situation. Despite the vast variety of types, their taste was almost always revolting, but the military had grown accustomed to such hardships. However, by the start of the Clone Wars, puddings had faded into the background, giving way to protein bars, and the Galactic Empire decided to do away with them entirely. We mustn't forget that the Jedi also had their own specific emergency rations. After all, they too are living beings with physical needs. In the publication, The Visual Encyclopedia, one can find mention of so-called energy capsules. This stuff was already quite potent. These capsules allowed Force users to go without normal food and proper sleep for an enormous amount of time, significantly increasing their overall endurance. This was indispensable during long flights or in the heat of grueling combat, when a couple of timely swallowed capsules literally saved lives. History is silent on whether such doping was addictive, but sometimes one can't help but imagine a scenario where a young Padawan, having overdosed on an energy food, spends 3 hours straight beating a wall with a mop, sincerely believing he is fighting a powerful Sith. As for a full-fledged MRE, it almost always included meals designed for quick reheating. Interestingly, in Star Wars they didn't use chemical heating packets, as in NATO rations, or dry alcohol, common in some other field rations. The system was simpler. The food was packed in an airtight plastic bag, and as soon as air got inside, a violent chemical reaction began. All you had to do was quickly seal the package and wait a couple of minutes, and there you had hot stew, porridge, or thick soup. Sometimes this ration was replaced with protein paste. It was more economical in terms of weight and volume, consisting of a sticky mass resembling very thick jelly in consistency. Despite its high nutritional value and quite tolerable taste, many soldiers disliked it. And you can understand them, because juicy stewed meat from a can with crispy crackers sounds far more appetizing than some kind of flavored substance. Nevertheless, stormtroopers and rebels often carried such tubes on their belts. The novel MedStar 1 Battle Surgeons noted that a civilian would find the taste of this army food repulsive, but the clones actually liked it. Among regular GAR soldiers, there was even a joke that the Kaminoans had specifically programmed the clones to enjoy this culinary nightmare. Fortunately, during the Imperial era and the New Republic era, such complaints became less frequent. Apparently, more attention was paid to the quality of soldiers' rations. Bread deserves a special mention. Just like in our reality in the galaxy far, far away, rations included hardtack, something like dry flatbreads, similar to crackers. The ones found in American MREs taste pretty good, but have one major drawback: they crumble like crazy. In addition to hardtack, rations included powdered semi-prepared bread, dry bread sticks, and even canned bread, which, by the way, actually exists in the diets of many modern armies. The Mandalorians had their own unique traditions as well. A true Mandalorian wife had to not only be a master with a blaster, but also know how to prepare hearty dishes of the national cuisine: bale rat stew, roast shatual, or the legendary ujalai, which often made its way from the festive table straight into the field rations. Since war is a familiar affair for this people, Mandalorian women prepared special dry rations based on harshan bread. Harshan is the driest and thinnest flatbread possible. The process is simple. Yeast dough was rolled out until it was so thin that the light from the campfire could be seen through it, and then baked until it became parchment-like. In fact, harshan translates to parchment bread. If it was made without fat or sugar, it was tasteless, but it could be stored 4 times longer than usual. This bread was light and had a layered texture, but eating it dry wasn't very pleasant. Usually, the Mandalorians soaked it in water, broth, or alcohol, of which they always had plenty. By all accounts, harshan most closely resembles Jewish matzo. Let's summarize. I think everything is clear regarding emergency rations. But what exactly was inside a standard army MRE? Let's take another look at that plastic box from episode The 5 that Luke Skywalker opened. Inside, we saw jerky, dried vegetables and fruits, energy pills, and dry bread. Interestingly, in the movie, Yoda, after tasting a bite of Luke's ration, spat it out with obvious disgust, even though Skywalker himself ate the contents with relish. In more advanced versions of the rations, in addition to this set, there were those very same self-heating meals and the familiar cans of stew we mentioned earlier. I guess I got carried away describing the military delicacies of the galaxy far, far away. While I was writing this, I actually got pretty hungry myself. And then I started wondering, who was actually in charge of the galley in the famous team from the Rebels animated series? Who cooked meals for the whole crew? Chopper is out of the question right away since he has, so to speak, paws. Ezra clearly isn't cut out for the role of head chef. He lacks experience. It's also hard to picture Zeb in an apron and holding a ladle. One awkward move, an oversalted dish, and the kitchen would be left in ruins. Sabine would most likely cover all the pots with graffiti before the water even comes to a boil. That leaves Hera by process of elimination. They couldn't have survived all this time on dry rations alone. Share your thoughts on the soldiers' menu in the comments below the video. Also, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you'd like, support the channel on Patreon. It all helps a lot. In the meantime, I wish everyone bon appetit, and see you later.